Hey everyone, I'm here today taking a look at the Mondo Master of the Universe 2000X Clawful figure. Some gorgeous box art. I feel like the box art is something that's very important to Master of the Universe, like it really captures the imagination and sets the tone of that fantasy world of Eternia. This guy's in the 1/12 scale, which is basically 6-inch figure scale. Basically, 6 inches would be 6 feet tall. But man, this guy is massive. I'll go over the articulation quickly. He's got really nice joints, like they move really smoothly. They're not too tight, not too loose, kind of perfect feeling joints. But the elbows both move. There's a double elbow joint on both sides, but the top part is kind of pointless. Like, if I just bend the bottom half of his arm there, you can see how far it goes up. If I bend the top part and then that bit, there's barely any difference. So the top part, I mean, it goes ever so slightly more forward. But really, if they didn't have the top part of the double elbow joints, it wouldn't really make any difference. And it's the same on the other arm. But I guess they have to do double elbow joints, otherwise people would be like, well, you know, for a premium figure, why aren't there double elbow joints? But they're a little bit pointless, which isn't a negative. I'm not saying that as a negative. It's just something that kind of struck me, because the arms still move really nicely. You know, the wrists swivel around on both sides, both claws open and close. There's a joint there, you know, like a swivel, sorry, at the top of the bicep there. Arms go out and forward and backwards. There's a joint in the middle of his torso, which blends really nicely. I guess because it's a shell, that kind of helps to hide the joint there. But, you know, there's like a joint in the middle of his torso, as well as where his groin area is. So you've got a lot of motion there with him moving forward and backwards. His head goes up like that, so you can have him hunched kind of if you want, like that, or looking upwards, and it goes down quite far, and because he's such a tall figure you kind of need the head to be able to go down to look at all the other figures. So there's a nice range of motion there, and it goes to side like that quite well because he's kind of hunched and his head is like facing forward where the joint is rather than upwards. That means the head doesn't like swivel all the way round. You can't turn his head backwards, not that you really need to, but it does go side to side like that. And then, you know, down the bottom there, the legs go out to the side. They're on a ball joint, and there's also a swivel at the top of the thigh. Then there's a knee joint. It's only a single knee joint, which is, because his legs, he kind of looks good with his legs bent a bit, so I don't feel like you need to straighten the legs. That wouldn't actually be a natural pose for him. Same with his ankles there. There's not actually much range for the ankles to go forward and backwards. They swivel around, but they don't... Well, actually, you can get them to go quite a bit backwards. But the boot sort of stops it there. I mean, you can see there I've got the foot going forward quite a bit. But with the legs, I don't think a double knee joint would really be necessary, and because he is a reasonably heavy figure, I think that might even make it difficult to balance him. The weight of it on the double knee joint might make it buckle. So it's not something that bothers me, that there's only a single knee joint. Now, before going into any more detail about the figure, I'll just go over the accessories quick. But these accessories are really nice. You've got a display stand diorama piece of Orcas Island, which is where Clawful's crab people are from, basically from the episode called The Island. Even though Clawful barely features in that episode, really, it's more focused on his cousin, who we have here, with his head poking up out of the water. And it's nice that they include him. We're probably never going to get an actual figure of him, but it's nice that he is, in some way, shape or form, have sort of a semi-action figure of him produced. I don't think he ever actually gets given a name in the episode. He's just Clawful's cousin. But I really like his head design, with all these teeth, or spikes at least, bone spikes sticking out around his mouth. It's a bit odd that he doesn't have a shell here though. On his back, you've got his shoulder and his neck, but he hasn't actually got his shell that should be there. Only a minor detail, but just something I noticed. I'm also not keen on the water being so green. It basically makes it look like slime. Like, I wish it was a bit more of a bluey green colour. Or even if it was like a translucent green. I don't know how easy that would have been to do, but I think that would have looked quite nice. But the way it's such a deep green, it basically looks like he's in a river of slime there. But I do feel like Mondo missed a trick by not having this head be removable. Like, it would have been cool if you could have popped this head off of here and put it on the Clawful body. Even though he and Clawful had different body types, as I say, we're probably never going to get an actual figure of this guy, so you could have at least kind of made do with a bit of a custom job of having this head on Clawful's body. And it might have even encouraged people to buy 2 of this set, so they get one for Clawful and one for his cousin here. So I do wish this head was removable. It's not. I guess if you're a customizer, you could pop this head off and drill a hole in it, but for the money I spent on this, I'm not going to be popping heads off and drilling holes in anything. But, you know, if you can afford to buy 2 of these things, I'd spent a silly amount of money on this in the UK. That'd be pretty cool to do. Because it almost feels like a waste of the head sculpt that it's just sticking out of this base and not actually on an action figure. You can see the heads are the same size, so I feel like this would have fitted on Clawful's body. See what I mean about him not having a shell on his back. There's some lovely detailing with the rock and barnacles and things sticking out of this, and some like bits of coral. Got like a mollusk or whatever there, and more rock around the back. These bits that look like coral. And then these kind of seaweed leaves here, which we do see in the episode. We have leaves like that on the rocks. And there's a hole in the back because it comes with a figure stand, like a plastic stand to hold the figure, basically like a claw. And that has a clear stand that you can put it in, or you can put it in the back of this stand. But personally, I'm not keen on those kind of stands. Like, if a figure can't stand on its own without a big bit of plastic gripped around it, then I think it's a poorly designed figure. And it just doesn't look good, having a big plastic clamp around the figure. So I will admit I have left that in the box, so I'm not going to be featuring that in the review. But it is just a big plastic clamp. There's not much else to show or say about it. But I do love the detailing on this. And he comes with these 2 little aquatic creatures, a fish and, I don't know, what's that, a mollusk or something they call these things, which both appeared in the episode The Island. Clawful's people actually eat those fish. But I really like that it's included these. They've got a very cartoony look to them. The figure of Clawful is based far more on the 4 Horsemen designs of the action figure line. But these 2 little creatures look straight up out of the cartoon, very animated look to them, with the sculpt and the paint job. And I think it's a nice novelty to have little creatures like this. I mean, we have big creatures like the shadow beasts and the griffins, Battle Cat and Panther, obviously. And we have little characters like Orko and Imp and Oedipus, but we've never really had just little animal creatures like this. And it really helps to build up the world of Eternia. Same with the diorama piece of Orcus Island. It's not like they're ever going to release a playset of Orcus Island, so it's nice that we do have like a little diorama piece at least of the island to build up Eternia. See, the paint job and the sculpt just looks very cartoony, but in a good way. I like it that they look straight up from the animated show. Clawful also comes with his green club, which I don't think he ever used in the cartoon, but the Staction that came out in 2000X had that, and so did most of the figures over the years. It's just kind of a staple of the character ever since the vintage toy. And that's got a slightly more techno design than the vintage toy. It is based on how the one that came with the Staction, and he holds that in this claw. He can't really hold it in his bigger claw, only in this smaller claw. And there is actually like a proper little rounded out area of the claw for him to hold weapons. And he holds it quite tightly. He also comes with 2 extra heads. I like this kind of neutral looking head where he's just got an angry look about him. But the heads pop off really nicely. Like sometimes with these head joints on figures, it can be really hard getting them off and you feel like you're going to snap it, popping it back on. These pop on and off really nicely, but also feel really tight once you've got them on. So this one here, he's got an open mouth as if he's roaring. And then he has another head, which is based on his cartoon look, which is really nice inclusion. It doesn't quite blend as well as the other 2 because it being more animated, it's a very smooth look to it, whereas the rest of the body is so hyper detailed, it just doesn't quite blend. But I'm still really glad they included this, because the cartoon is an important part of 2000X. So it's nice that for people who do want the animated design, you have got that option, and it certainly doesn't look bad on there. It's actually a great sculpt. It's better than the Origins cartoon collection Clawful. Speaking of the cartoon collection Clawful, I'll just bring that in to compare. I was really excited to get this Origins Clawful to start off with because I've wanted a 2000X Clawful action figure for like 20 years. It was always a real frustration to me because he was my favourite updated design from 2000X, but we never got a figure of him. So to finally get one was really exciting, but actually this Origins figure's not that good. The proportions are really off. But just look at the detail on this guy. Got to be one of the best sculpted Master of the Universe figures we have ever had. And that's one of the things I liked about Clawful. I feel like having that extra design, because he's a crab creature, it works for him. I think some Master of the Universe characters work better when they are the more simplistic, smooth designs. Mainly the human characters, like Triclops for instance. When you've got the creatures like Whiplash and Clawful, the extra detailing to give you all the scales and things really makes them look fantastic and look so much better. Man, look at that shell on the back. The spikes are all a kind of rubbery plastic, which is a good thing because with the Staction I always felt like they were a bit brittle and I'm always worried about snapping them off. Whereas with this thing, it feels pretty sturdy, like I'm never worried that I'm going to break this thing. The skirt is kind of unique to this figure. Because on the Staction, on the 2000X design, they only have these crabby looking bits on his skirt at the front, whereas on here you've got them all the way around. Look at this massive claw. The only thing I'm not that keen on with the sculpt of this figure are these holes going into his body. Do crabs have these sort of things? I don't know. But they just look kind of gross to me, that he's got all these little holes that just go into his body. The ones on his forearm aren't painted with the black at the end, but the ones on his bicep and tricep are. These massive feet as well, these big toenails. There are some differences between this and the Staction. I thought this was going to be pretty much just the 2000X Staction figure with articulation, but this isn't the Four Horsemen design. This is based on it, but there are differences which I'll show you when I do a comparison. Now here he is with the Classics and the Masterverse Clawfuls, which are far more inspired by the vintage toy, but they do have a few elements of 2000X. So there's a big difference between these guys. And I'll also bring in the Filmation Classics Clawful, who's barely recognisable as the same character. Even though I love Clawful in Filmation because of how he was depicted, he looked very different. It's a very different design. And here he is with the other two 2000X Clawfuls we've had. The cartoon collection version, which, as I said earlier, is actually a bit disappointing because for some reason they just didn't give him a stomach. He goes like straight from chest to hips, like where's his stomach? You can see with these two, they've got like a thinner stomach going down before you get to the waist. And that's how he looked in the cartoon as well. Because they've taken it out of this figure, it throws off the proportions and it makes him too short. Like, he's shorter than all the other deluxe figures. Ramman, Roboto, Beastman, Whiplash are all quite a bit taller than this guy. And yet in the show, he was as tall as them, if not a bit more. So it's really frustrating that after waiting so long for an action figure of Clawful, it just wasn't quite right for some bizarre reason. But the Staction here is what the new toy is the most heavily based on. But you can see it isn't a straight up recreation of that. They've taken that as the inspiration, but really hyped it up even more. There's like even more detail than the Four Horsemen did, as if that was possible. Also gives you some idea how big this guy is. Like, I always thought the Staction of Clawful was massive, especially compared to the original 2000X toys. But I mean, this guy is even bigger. And I think the proportions are a bit better on this one. On the Staction, his arms are a bit long and lanky and his legs are a bit short. It doesn't look bad. I mean, I love this Staction figure. This has always been my favourite Clawful figurine I've got. But I do think this new one is even better. Like, with the longer legs and the thicker but a little bit shorter arms, I think looks better. But man, just fantastic. The only thing I'm not so keen on with the new Clawful is that he's got a lot of black paint around the eyes. And I just don't think that looks good. There's the original face sculpt. And this one, that dark paint around the eyes just doesn't do it for me. In general, I think I actually do prefer the face sculpt on the original, and the Classics Clawful has that face sculpt as well. almost identical to the Staction, which I think I do actually prefer a little bit more than this one. So there it is on the Classics figure. I do love that head sculpt for Clawful. That's not the head that actually came with Clawful. He had a more vintage toy looking one. And I guess that's where the dark around the eyes comes from actually on this new Mondo one. I think the original Clawful had like really black eyebrows or whatever, so maybe that inspired them to do it. I don't know, but I think it looks better without it on the Classics and the Staction 2000X heads. You see the feet are a lot bigger on the figure than on the Staction, which it needs to be because, I mean, this is a big guy, so he needs the big feet to balance him. But they're not out of proportion or anything. I mean, they look great, but that really helps with the balance. I mean, he balances perfectly. I've always loved how the shell looks on the 2000X design. I do quite like all the scratches and things. He's got a lot of scars on the Staction version that aren't really on this new one. It's like having to choose between my two children, if I had children. I love both these designs for Clawful. Which one is best? And here he is with the Chronicles He-Man, because the Chronicles line is 6-inch scale, so this Mondo Clawful is actually in scale with the Chronicles figures, but I think he looks better with Masterverse actually, that were slightly taller. But to read, I mean, it's down to personal choice and personal taste on how tall do you like your Clawful to be. Even though I like him being a lot bigger, I feel like he's almost like a little bit too big compared to Chronicles. Like you can see, this is a Masterverse figure. He-Man's about the same size as Clawful here in Masterverse. I think that works a bit better for me. I don't know, I mean, it's kind of cool having Clawful be that much bigger. Now look at that for balance. He's holding the figure in his hand, he's holding it kind of in front of him a bit, and he is still balancing. And this isn't perfectly flat ground either, but he's holding that up. The joint isn't bending and folding under the weight of it. Man, that is quality. That is quality in an action figure. See, that's why I didn't bother getting the clamp stand out of the packaging. He does not need it. And here he is on the display stand. For the most part, I do prefer more vintage-inspired designs, but Webstore and Clawful were the two that really stood out for me with 2000X as being vast improvements. And it was such a frustration to never get proper action figures of those two characters, because they were probably the two I wanted the most. And we have now had a really great Webstore in Origins, and this Clawful is fantastic. I had to get it. I spent a stupid amount of money on this figure to get it in the UK. But it was worth it. There is talk that Mondo are going to re-release the figure, but without the stand and the little creatures, which will be a bit cheaper and just generally, hopefully, better for people to get. Because I think a lot of people missed out on this or just couldn't afford it because it was pretty expensive. And I paid over odds for it to get it in the UK. But I am actually really glad I got the display stand with it. Because I really liked Orcus Island, and it actually gets expanded upon in a comic about Andra from Master of the Universe Revelations. It's actually a surprisingly good comic. It's just a fun little one-shot adventure, but we see more of Orcus Island in that. And, you know, Decker was quite a nice character who lived there, Man-at-Arms as mentor. So it's nice to have just a little diorama of it, and these little creatures that we wouldn't normally get. It's funny that this set is based on the episode The Island, because that was the most focus Clawful ever got, and yet actually in that episode he's barely in it. It focuses far more on his cousin. I feel like 2000X kind of wrote themselves into a corner with Clawful and Whiplash. They made the characters so stupid, there wasn't really much they could do with them in terms of developing their character or showing much personality, because they were just idiots. And so you got an episode that was based far more on Clawful's race rather than Clawful himself, i.e. the island, and then they did the same thing with Whiplash in the episode Underworld, where we see more of his people, but Whiplash is barely in it, and you don't really learn anything much more about him, which is a shame, because Clawful in Filmation was one of my favourite evil warriors, because he was more intelligent than most of them, and a bit more ambitious. So I kind of would have loved to have had Filmation Clawful's personality in 2000X Clawful's body. Like, that would have been a formidable evil warrior. So after 20 odd years of waiting, we now not only have one, but two 2000X Clawfuls, a cartoon design and a more hyper-detailed Four Horsemen type design. I feel like they're really making up for the fact that we missed out on him first time round. There are even rumours online that the next Chronicles figure we're going to get is Clawful. I don't know how true that is, it might just be like online rumours. But it'd be kind of crazy if we end up with a third Clawful figure this year. Speaking of Chronicles, there is a movie Orco figure up for pre-order on Mattel Creations UK right now. So this is the best Clawful figure we've ever had. Like, even if you're not as keen on the 2000X design, like just the quality of the figure is beyond anything. Man, I'm probably not going to buy any more of the Mondo figures because I'm happy enough with other designs for other characters, but this Clawful has always been a favourite of mine, and I just love Clawful being bigger than all the other characters like this. Now, if I can just get this video to about 100,000 views, that might just cover the cost of the figure and what I spent on it. So let me know what you think of this guy in the comments, and if you were able to pick him up or not, because I think he's pretty hard to get hold of. Probably for the same reason that I love it, because it was frustrating that we were denied a Clawful in 2000X. I think he is quite a highly desired character in that style. So thanks for watching everyone, and I'll catch you again soon.